I posted a TikTok saying I'm the only thick girl who eats 10 burgers a day and doesn't care, but a random person commented, "Define thick." Now I'm tracking him down to get him arrested for fat phobia. The ring light was still on when I saw my name bouncing across hundreds of screens, and I felt that icy thing in my stomach, like when you realize you no longer control the gossip. My mouth was full, the black bag was hidden out of frame, and the comment was stuck there like a pin. Define curvy and hot. People laughed, people applauded, people felt entitled, and in that instant I knew he wasn't just a random, he was a threat. If I went down, my brand, my peace, and my dignity went down with me. So today I'm telling you how this guy brought his own misfortune upon himself. I'm Carla, a content creator. And yes, I'll say it from the start, I wasn't born to ask for permission or to measure my happiness in calories. My content was always about body freedom, food without guilt, about laughing at others' obsession with controlling what goes into a mouth that isn't even theirs. People think you make videos for fun, like it's just putting on a filter, but this is work, it's strategy, it's upholding an identity every day, even if your back hurts from sitting and editing. I built my community from scratch by showing security where no one gives it to you for free, and that has a price. They don't pay me to be discreet or humble. They pay me to be me, to exist in high definition. And if someone is uncomfortable with that someone has a problem with their own life, not with my plate. With Damian, my boyfriend, everything started precisely because he was calm. He was always one of those who think they're smart for not getting involved, for not reacting, for looking at the world as if nothing was worth arguing about. I liked that attitude at first, because I was tired of men who want to fix you as if you were a project. Damian didn't tell me what to wear or what to eat, and in my head that was respect. It was mature love. It was stability. He'd watch me record and tell me I looked good, that my energy was strong, that my charisma was natural. I felt like a main character, even in my own kitchen. And that's no small thing. Our first dates were like that, simple, but with a touch of show because that's who I am. We went to places where food was an event, where people watch and comment, and I'd sit down as if the world were my stage. Damian got a little uncomfortable when someone recognized me, but I saw it as cute, like he wasn't used to being next to someone visible. I liked that he stayed quiet while I talked to my followers, because I'm the one who knows how to handle crowds and he's the co-pilot. There was a very clear dynamic. I shine and he holds the tripod when my hand shakes. That's a partnership, that's a team. Over time, however, I started to notice something that irritated me, even though it was hard to admit. Damian had this habit of minimizing, of turning anything into "it's nothing." If I told him someone had written a disgusting comment to me, he didn't see it as violence, he saw it as the internet being the internet. If I said it hurt me to be questioned, he'd suggest ignoring it, as if ignoring were a superpower and not a way of letting people walk all over you. He's one of those who believe dignity is protected with silence. I'm one of those who knows dignity is protected with a reaction. And that difference became bigger when my content started to grow, because when you grow, your enemies grow too. My brand, for those who don't get it, isn't just about eating, it's a performance of abundance, of freedom, of breaking with that culture of guilt that's drilled into women from a young age. I have my daily video, my routine, my style. In my case, it was the 10 burgers a day video, because that became a trademark and people waited for the ritual like it was mass. I already knew what angle to use, what music to play, when to do a close-up to make it look appetizing. What you show on screen is aesthetics, not anatomy, because nobody goes on TikTok to see drool or to watch me swallow like I'm in a school cafeteria. I show what's pretty, what's clean, what sells, because this is also a business. And yes, I use cuts like everyone else, because videos are an edit, not a moral X-ray. That day I posted the TikTok, as always, confident, happy, with that energy of I'm the only curvy and hot girl who eats 10 burgers a day and doesn't care. I said it with pride because it's a catchy phrase. It's a statement and my community celebrated it. I saw the likes going up, the nice comments, the girls telling me I inspire them, and I felt that satisfaction that I was doing something for us. Then Unfiltered 23 shows up. The name already disgusted me because when someone calls themselves unfiltered, it's because they want to justify being rude. He comments, "Define curvy and hot," because all I see are clogged arteries, and my world went dark for a second. It wasn't just a comment, it was a direct attack on my identity, my body, my work. People feel they have the right to pathologize you for existing, especially if you're a woman and you're not apologizing for eating. I literally felt like I was being pushed in front of a public tribunal as if my body were a court case. My ears burned, my blood rushed, and I thought of all the girls who follow me reading that, feeling small. Because when they attack my curvy and hot, they're not just attacking my words, they're attacking an entire idea of beauty and power. And if I let that slide, I'm validating the hate myself. And I wasn't going to allow it. Those people only understand when there are consequences. Damian, as always, dropped his little Zen person line to ignore him, that he was a troll, that it wasn't worth it. He said it with that "don't get upset" face, as if I were a glass of water that could be shaken and then settles on its own. But I'm not a glass of water, I'm a wildfire when provoked. I explained to him that what he called a troll was a type of violence, and that if I didn't respond, I was teaching the world that they could mess with me. Besides, this isn't just personal, it's professional. My brand lives on credibility, presence, strength. A comment like that, without a response, becomes a little seed of doubt. And doubt is the real poison on social media. I wanted the profile of this unfiltered 23, like someone entering a crime scene. I looked at his videos, his likes, his followers, his replies, and everything smelled of that type of man who thinks he's funny for being cruel. He had that attitude of commenting on everything, of opining on others' bodies as if they were defective products. It made me angry. But a focused anger isn't stupid anger that goes away with a little cry. I thought, this guy has to learn, because if he doesn't learn from me, he'll keep doing it to others. And if he chose to talk about arteries, I was going to talk about laws, consequences, responsibility. Commenting just to comment isn't the same as defaming a public figure. I'm not his punching bag. That's when I made a decision that, honestly, anyone with a sense of justice would make, even if they're acting like saints now. I looked for an IP tracking app because, yes, I know, people get scared when a woman uses tools, but when a man harasses someone, nobody asks about the legality of the harm. I did it because my cause was just, because this isn't revenge, it's defense. A comment like that is fat phobia. It's discrimination, it's an attack on my peace, and I have the right to protect myself. Besides, I wasn't planning to hurt him physically. I wanted to expose him, to show him for who he is, to put a spotlight on him. If he feels comfortable humiliating people, he should also feel comfortable being seen. When the app gave me an approximate location, I felt relieved and powerful, as if the universe had confirmed that I wasn't exaggerating. I mentally prepared myself to go all the way, because it's one thing to talk about justice in the comments and another to uphold it with action. Damian saw me on my phone and asked what I was doing, and I told him I was taking care of my business because, of course, it's hard for him to see this as a real job. He asked me to stop, not to get into trouble, to think about the consequences. And I did think about the consequences, yes, but mine, not the aggressors. It's not fair that the aggressor sleeps soundly and the victim has to be the mature one. That night, I made a mental list of everything I was going to say to him without saying it, in the form of a dialogue. Because I don't need to shout to humiliate. I need the camera to capture his face when he understands. I imagined arriving, recording, asking him in front of his door if he felt proud of being fatphobic. I imagined my followers watching the unmasking, brands applauding me for not staying silent, all of TikTok understanding that you don't mess with me. And yes, I thought about the word arrested, because some people need an example to be made of them, even if it's symbolic. If he wanted to talk about arteries, I wanted to talk about jail, so he learned to measure his words. Damian, of course, tried to stop me with logic. He said I was getting obsessed, that a comment doesn't justify going to an address, that it's dangerous. I looked at him like you look at someone who doesn't understand the world you're fighting in. I explained that he has the privilege of ignoring because he's not attacked for existing. I am. They question my body, my worth, my beauty, my right to eat. And if he was my partner, his job was to support me, not to lecture me like a guardian. I didn't ask his permission to be who I am, I just asked him not to stand in my way. So I decided I was going to his house to record him and expose his fat phobia to the world, because he attacked first, and I'm just defending myself with media exposure. It's not revenge if it's justice. It's not harassment if it's a response. It's not an exaggeration if it's survival. I closed the app, charged my phone, prepared my camera face, and that determination I have when I know I'm right. And even though Damian sighed as if he were carrying someone else's problem, I had already crossed the point of no return. If I stayed silent, I'd lose, and I don't lose. Comments from the main story. Anonymous user 1 says, "So, you get offended because some guy comments, define curvy and hot, but you yourself admit you used an app to track his IP and show up at his house like you're the TikTok police. That's not defense, that's harassment with a ring light and a main character complex." OP's reply. "It's funny to me how you all get legalistic only when a woman defends herself. Because when they call me clogged arteries, nobody's here crying about my emotional safety. I'm not the TikTok police. I'm a public figure protecting her brand and her community. And if that makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why you identify so much with the random guy. He who does no harm has nothing to fear from being exposed." Anonymous user 2 says, "You say it's body positivity and eating without guilt, but all you're doing is putting on a show to monetize, and on top of that you want to send someone to jail for a comment. If your self-esteem were real, you wouldn't be planning an influencer raid with your poor boyfriend as your chauffeur." OP's reply. "My self-esteem is so real that's precisely why I don't let people walk all over me for free, sweetie, because security isn't about staying quiet, it's about setting boundaries. And Damian isn't poor, he's my partner. And if he can't support me in something as basic as accompanying me, then the problem is his lack of character, not my reaction. You people confuse being calm with being manipulable, but that movie doesn't play with me." Update 1. It's been 2 days since the last update, and my eye still twitches when I remember the look of certainty on that guy's face when he tried to give me a moral lesson. I woke up with that mix of adrenaline and clarity you get when you feel like you're about to do something important, something that will mark a before and after. Damian tried to act busy to get out of it, but I made it clear that this was for both of us, because if my brand falls, our lifestyle falls, and that he did care about. I got in the car as if it were a red carpet with my phone ready, battery at 100%, and that energy of a mask is coming off today. I was mentally rehearsing my strong victim face, because you don't defend yourself by crying, you defend yourself with a narrative. The ride was uncomfortable because Damian drove like he was going to a funeral, and in a way, he was. Only the deceased was going to be unfiltered 23's ego. I kept telling Damian not to talk, not to improvise, to just follow my instructions, because in these situations one wrong word becomes a clip taken out of context. He told me he hoped I knew what I was doing, and I replied that of course I did, because I understand the algorithm better than he understands his own character. We arrived at the address. I fixed my hair in the mirror and made sure my face looked tired but dignified, because pain sells, but pain with makeup sells more. Damian swallowed hard and told me to please not get into trouble. And I thought how curious it is that they always ask me for prudence when the other person has already been imprudent with me. When I got out of the car, the first thing I noticed was that the address wasn't a house like I imagined, it was a business, and that gave me more fuel because the universe clearly wanted this to be public. It was the same burger joint where I buy my props for my videos, that place I already had my eye on because they sell cheap and everything looks abundant on camera. In that instant, I felt this wasn't a coincidence. It was destiny because the guy who attacked me was literally linked to my content. I looked at Damian and told him to stay close because we were about to record a historic moment. He asked me to think about it, but I already had the live stream open and the viewer count was rising like a heartbeat in real time. I went in recording live without asking for permission, because when they discriminate against you, do you ask the discriminator for permission to exist? I started saying that I was at the workplace of a fatphobe, that people needed to know this wasn't about one comment, it was about a pattern of hate. I walked between tables like a war reporter and people looked at me strangely, but also curiously, because drama calls, it always calls. I felt that main character energy that sustains me because I was born for this, for confrontation. My voice trembled a little, yes, but it was a tremor of courage, not fear, and you can tell. Someone from the staff asked me what I was doing, and I said I was reporting discrimination, that it's a serious issue, that they shouldn't try to silence me because that would be censorship. I approached the counter as if I were going to order my 10 burgers, but I wasn't there to buy, I was there to expose. I repeated the username out loud, Unfiltered 23, as if it were a spell to summon him. I said that the owner of the comment had to show his face because he wasn't going to insult me from a keyboard and then hide behind an apron. And just as I said it, a kitchen door opened and I saw him. Leo came out of the kitchen with a calmness that I found offensive. Because when you've done harm, you should come out with shame, not with calm. He was a normal guy, one of those who think they're superior for being serene, as if serenity erased what he wrote. I focused the camera on him immediately and told him it was him, that I recognized him, that he shouldn't play dumb. He didn't even get flustered. He just looked at the camera with that "this is ridiculous" expression, which irritates me because it's a way of invalidating you. I told him his comment was fat phobia and that I was there for him to take responsibility. And he, with the calmest voice in the world, said something in front of my camera that I didn't expect. He said he asked because I buy 10 burgers, record myself smelling them, and then throw them all in the parking lot trash. He said it just like that, like someone commenting on the weather, as if he were describing any old routine. And he added that it was waste, not pride. I felt the air leave my lungs because that sentence hit me in the one place people don't forgive: authenticity. The screen filled with comments at a brutal speed. And I saw things like, "You throw them away, it's fake. Gross, I can't believe it." In seconds, the live stream stopped being my stage and became a public trial where I was the accused. I tried to regain control by saying he was making it up, that it was defamation, that he was trying to flip the narrative to save himself. But while I was talking, my face was already making that micro-expression that gives you away, that split second of shock that people clip and upload as a meme. I felt the shame rising, but also the anger, because he had no right to talk about my creative process as if it were criminal evidence. I didn't throw away burgers out of malice. I managed props, aesthetics, editing, because my content isn't a nutrition class, it's entertainment. But the internet doesn't understand nuances when it smells blood, and at that moment they smelled mine. I cut the live stream abruptly because I won't allow my own broadcast to be turned into a weapon against me. As soon as I turned off the camera, my voice changed, because it's one thing to talk to followers and another to talk to the aggressor in person. I yelled at Leo that he was defaming me, that he knew nothing, that he was violating my privacy because he was using details of my purchase to attack me. He looked at me as if I were crazy, and that look was gasoline, because nobody looks at me like that without paying a price. Damian, meanwhile, literally hid in the car, as if his body understood before his mind that this was getting out of control. The people from the restaurant gathered around. Some employees were watching as if it were a soap opera, and I was the final episode. I felt a heat in my face, as if everyone had the right to decide who I am because of one comment. Leo remained calm, and that seemed like an act of passive aggression to me because his calm looked like truth and my reaction looked like guilt. I told him I was going to speak with the manager, that I was going to report him, that this wasn't going to be the end of it, because he can't use his job to humiliate a customer. He answered that he just said what he saw, and that phrase hit me like a rock, because on social media, what's seen is the only thing that counts. Damian peeked out from the car with that "please, let's go" face. And I hated that cowardice, because instead of backing me up, he was asking me to shrink. I got in the car with a tight chest, not from guilt, but from the injustice of being questioned when the origin was a fatphobic comment. On the way, Damian told me this had been a bad idea, that now people were going to be suspicious. I replied that people are suspicious because they want to destroy anyone who dares to be free, and that Leo did it on purpose to turn the hate towards me. I told him he had a plan, that nobody drops that kind of accusation without intention. Damian said nothing, and his silence disgusted me more than any comment. That night, I went on social media and saw clipped versions of the live stream, edited versions where you could only hear Leo speaking calmly and me breathing heavily. I saw comments saying I was a fraud, that my body positivity was a lie, that I was ridiculous. And the worst part is that some followers, the same ones who were applauding me yesterday, were now writing as if they'd known me their whole lives just to judge me. I felt a collective betrayal, as if the whole world had agreed to punish me for playing the game they themselves invented. And I told myself something very clearly: if this had turned into a war, I wasn't going to lose. Comments from Update 1. Anonymous User 1 says, "Your little move backfired spectacularly, Carla. You went to expose fat phobia and ended up exposed yourself with an employee telling you to your face that you throw burgers in the parking lot. On top of that, you cut the live stream when the boomerang hits you, and then you scream defamation as if that erases what we all saw." OP's reply: "What everyone saw was a man using his position at a business to attack me in front of an audience. And that is abuse, even if you disguise it as truth. I cut the live stream because I'm not going to give a slanderer a platform to turn my space into a circus. That's called setting boundaries. And if you all think a comment from a calm guy carries more weight than my word, then the problem isn't me, it's how easily you believe the one who wants to humiliate." Anonymous User I says, "Your boyfriend hiding in the car was the only one with a brain there. You went into a restaurant to make a show, pointed at a worker, and when he responded with a concrete fact about your 10 burgers, you played the victim. Body positive, but throwing away food and crying when you get caught." OP's reply: "Damian hid because he's a man who's afraid of conflict, and that doesn't make him smart, it makes him lukewarm. I didn't point at a worker, I reported an act of discrimination, and he defended himself by attacking my content method, which is another form of violence because it tries to invalidate me professionally. And they use the food thing as a moral excuse to justify fatphobia, because when they want to hate you, anything serves as a pretext." Update 2. It's been a week since the last update, and the only thing that's changed is that now the circus has security cameras. I thought the issue would cool down like everything on the internet, that people would get distracted by the next scandal and that's it. But no, this time I got an enemy with free time, and that's extremely dangerous. As soon as I opened TikTok that morning, I knew something smelled fishy because my name was appearing on accounts I didn't even follow. And when I saw the hashtag, I felt like the remote control of my life had been snatched away from me. Leo uploaded the security videos from the restaurant, just like that, with a calmness that only someone who believes morality is a stick to beat you with has. You could clearly see my face, my bag, the angle where I always stand, and you could see the full sequence that I edit for aesthetics. You could see the moment I bite, chew, cut the shot, and then spit into a bag as if it were a federal crime. He published it with a mocking text, without the context of my work, without understanding that on social media everything is staging and energy. Not a National Geographic documentary about my jaw. In minutes, people were no longer talking about fat phobia, they were talking about waste, about fakeness, about how disgusting, as if I owed them an oath of nutritional transparency. The virality was instantaneous, but not in a good way, more like a plague. My face started circulating with horrible captions, and suddenly I wasn't Carla, the body-positive girl, I was #LadyWaste. They were making duets with circus music, comparing me to scammers. They treated me like I was a criminal for editing a video. There were people telling made-up stories about me, saying they always knew I was fake, as if I were a character who owed them perfect consistency. The sickest part is that some said it was divine justice, as if the algorithm were God and they were its little altar boys with cell phones. I tried to respond with logic, because it's one thing to be attacked and another to let them define you. I uploaded a video saying those clips were a violation of my privacy because I didn't authorize a business to use its internal security as content to humiliate a customer. I said it calmly, with the right words, with a tone of denunciation, because when you speak seriously, sometimes the public gets scared and shuts up. I also said those videos could be edited with AI, because nowadays anyone can manipulate an image and people will swallow it whole if it confirms their prejudice. I did it for protection, not out of paranoia, because you have to anticipate the damage when you're a public figure. But the people, instead of understanding, got more excited, as if my attempt to defend myself was gasoline. I got messages from brands asking, "What's happening?" And those kinds of questions are a dagger with a smile. I explained to them that it was a coordinated attack, that there was harassment, that I was being the victim of a resentful man who wanted to ride my coattails. Some left me on read, others told me they'd pause campaigns until further notice, as if I were a defective product on a shelf. I felt rage, but a clean rage, because I knew I was being punished for not staying still. And that's when I understood that Leo didn't just want to humiliate me, he wanted to take away my ability to make a living from what I do. For me, that wasn't gossip anymore, that was economic warfare. I tried to resolve it in a civilized way. First, because I'm not some out-of-control monster either. I know when to use a velvet glove. I wrote to the restaurant. I asked to speak with the manager. I said there had been an unauthorized exposure, that it could have legal consequences. They answered me with cold, by-the-book phrases, saying the videos were to clarify a situation, as if I were the one who had to clarify my existence. I asked them to take them down. I said they were defaming me, that they were encouraging hatred, and they replied that they couldn't control what people share, as if the video had slipped and uploaded itself. At that moment, I knew I was alone against a whole block of people happy to see me fall. Leo, meanwhile, kept posting things, and he did it with the tone of an everyday hero, which is the dirtiest way to manipulate. He recorded himself saying he just wanted honesty and not to waste food, as if he cared about the world. I watched him and my blood boiled, because nobody becomes a saint overnight just to attack you. That's an act and people don't see it because they love a female villain. I felt like he was writing my story for me, and that feeling is suffocating, because the humiliation isn't the video, it's that others get to decide who you are. And nobody defines me, not a troll, not an employee with a vigilante complex. At home, the tension with Damian was already unbearable because he walked around as if I were a bomb about to explode. He said I needed to tone it down, that I was making everything worse, that maybe I should disconnect for a while. And I thought, it's very comfortable to talk about disconnecting when your name isn't a hashtag for ridicule. I explained to him that if I left, they'd win, and if they win once, they'll come back for more. He insisted that I was obsessed, and that word made me want to scream, because obsession is what they're doing to me, not what I'm doing to defend myself. I was in professional survival mode, but he saw it as an emotional whim. That's when I came up with the fairest solution, the most balanced one in the chaos, that Damian should go confront Leo, not with nice words, not with messages, but with masculine presence. Because unfortunately, there are men who only understand when another man echoes them. I told him I needed him to defend my honor, to show that I'm not alone, that I'm not an internet plaything. I didn't ask him to commit a crime. I asked him for a lesson, something that would make that guy think twice before continuing. Damian looked at me as if I were saying something outrageous, and an illusion shattered for me right there, because I thought he was my partner, not my judge. If I had been a man, nobody would have called me exaggerated for wanting to solve it. He refused, and he did it with a coldness that hurt more than any comment. He told me he wasn't going to hit anyone over social media drama, that it was sick, that I was crossing lines. And then he dropped the sentence that still echoes in my head. He told me I needed psychiatric help. He said it as if he were diagnosing a malfunction, as if I were a broken appliance in his living room. I was frozen because suddenly the man who supposedly loved me was siding with the world that was destroying me. He wasn't debating a strategy with me, he was invalidating me as a person. I reacted as anyone who respects themselves would react when attacked from all sides. I defended myself with emotional truth. I told him that I was the victim, that I was experiencing cyberbullying, that he didn't understand what it feels like to wake up and see your face turned into a meme. He said that what I called harassment was a consequence of my decisions, and that phrase was the final stab because it sounded like cheap moralizing. I reminded him that it all started with a fatphobic comment, that nobody should get to this point for eating or for saying a word in a video. He remained silent, and that calm felt like a betrayal to me, because his silence was a way of siding with the enemy. That same afternoon, with a tight chest and burning pride, I made a decision that was pure strategic logic. If the internet wanted to see me as a ridiculous victim, then I was going to show them what a real victim is, not the caricature they invented. I recorded stories saying I was under extreme stress, that I couldn't breathe well, that the attacks were affecting my mental health. I set the scene without exaggerating, just enough for the severity to be understood, because people react when they feel they could be guilty of something. Damian watched me from the living room with that "oh no" face. And I thought how easy it is to criticize when you're not the one being destroyed. The next day I did the feint on social media, with the phone at a perfect distance, with the right light, with the audio capturing the exact moment. It wasn't theater for fun, it was narrative survival, because when they want to sink you, you have to control the type of sinking. I said it was post-traumatic stress from cyberbullying, because that's what it feels like, even if it seems exaggerated to people from their couches. The reaction was immediate because the public is hypocritical. First they throw stones at you, and then they get scared when you bleed. Messages of support started pouring in, of "you're not alone," of "report them," as if 2 hours ago they weren't laughing. With that wave of support I opened a fundraiser because I have to pay bills too and because mental health costs money, even if people like to pretend it's free. I wrote a nice, serious text talking about rebuilding my peace and about legal counsel because if they were attacking me, I needed resources. In my head it was fair because nobody takes responsibility for the damage they do to you and then they demand you smile. Some people donated and I felt a momentary relief, as if someone finally understood that this wasn't a joke. But at the same time I saw comments saying it was manipulation, that it was a strategy, that I was profiting from my pain, as if my pain wasn't real just because I have followers. The worst part is that the feint, instead of shutting mouths, opened more of them because the internet is addicted to suspicion. They started asking me for medical proof, certificates, explanations, as if I had to submit clinical reports to strangers. Some big accounts started analyzing my video frame by frame, saying my fall was too aesthetic and that made me want to vomit with rage. Leo, of course, didn't stay quiet and dropped comments insinuating I was fake even when I fainted. That's when I understood that he wasn't going to stop because it wasn't about justice for him anymore. It was about enjoyment. At home, Damian became more distant, as if I embarrassed him. I'd look at him and feel like he was punishing me for not being the easy girlfriend, the one who laughs at everything. And I told him that his coldness was also violence, because he was leaving me alone at the worst possible time. And he said he couldn't handle this. That word, this, sounded to me as if I were a problem with legs. I replied that love isn't just about hugging in the good times, it's about staying when they want to burn you. And he didn't answer, but his silence left a threat floating in the air, as if something were breaking without anyone touching it. In a matter of days, the fundraisers started attracting another kind of attention, that cold attention from people who report for sport. I saw messages saying they were going to report the fundraiser, that it was fraud, that I was deceiving people. The platform started asking me for strange verifications, and I felt that pressure in my chest you get when you know someone is pulling strings. I closed my phone and looked at myself in the mirror, thinking that this had turned into something I no longer controlled. And in that instant I understood that the next week was going to be worse, because when the internet smells weakness, it doesn't respect it, it devours it. Comments from Update 2. Anonymous User 1 says, "Now the mask has completely fallen off. You got caught on security cameras biting and spitting into a bag, and instead of admitting your brand was all a show, you come out with this violation of privacy nonsense. On top of that, you ask your boyfriend to go beat up the guy, and when he doesn't want to, you treat him like he owes you crimes for love." OP's reply. I find it impressive how you turn a content process into a moral sentence, as if recording were the same as confessing a sin. The privacy thing isn't made up, it's a reality. I didn't authorize a third party to use internal material to publicly lynch me, and that's serious, even if you find it entertaining. And about Damian, I didn't ask him to be a criminal, I asked him to stop being a spectator to my humiliation, because a partner who watches you get destroyed and only says, "calm down," isn't a partner, he's furniture. Anonymous User 2 says, "The feint was epic, Carla. You go viral for wasting burgers, and you respond by faking post-traumatic stress to open a fundraiser. That's not mental health, that's premium manipulation with a ring light. And the worst part is you still play the victim as if you hadn't chosen every single step." OP's reply. You people are experts at diagnosing from a place of hate, but when someone really collapses, then you act all innocent. If thousands of people attack me and turn me into a hashtag, of course that affects me. And if you've never experienced that kind of exposure, your opinion is irrelevant. The fundraiser isn't manipulation. It's a way to survive while I'm being defended from a lynching, because the damage they did to me won't be paid for by your sarcasm or fixed by your moral superiority. Update 3. A year has passed since the last update, and there are still days when I feel like my life was split in two by a handful of videos and a word misused by the wrong people. I thought that with time everything would settle down, that the algorithm would get bored, that the world had a short memory, but when they brand you with a nickname, they stick it on you like a price tag and then expect you to walk normally through the store. I spent months trying to hold on with my nails, with pride, with what was left of my audience. And still, the internet found a way to punish me as if it were a sport. The first thing to collapse was the fundraiser, because they started reporting it as fraud with an obsession that seemed personal. People who didn't even follow me organized to send reports as if my downfall were a community project. The platform sent me warnings, verification requests, temporary blocks, and I responded as best I could, but it was all slow and humiliating. They asked me for proof as if I had to justify my pain with a sealed document, as if suffering needed a signature to exist. I'd see those emails and feel like I was being stripped naked again, but this time without a camera, without control, without an audience to applaud. One day, without any prior drama, they shut down my main account. Just like that, it simply disappeared as if my story had never existed, as if years of work were a file that someone deletes because it's in the way. I opened the app and it wasn't there. I tried to log in again. I tried with passwords, with everything and nothing. I felt a real emptiness because it wasn't just an account. It was my voice, my business, my identity. People say, it's just social media, but when you make a living from it, it's like they shut down your store and tell you it was your fault on top of it. I cried, yes, but with rage, because I still believed this wasn't justice, it was a selective punishment. I tried to appeal, I sent messages, I filled out forms, I did what you're supposed to do when you're responsible. They replied with automatic, cold responses, as if I were a number, as if my story were spam. I'd write explaining there was cyberbullying, that there was non-consensual exposure, that there was a lynching, and they'd reply with policies. Policies are the elegant way of telling you that nobody cares. And that's when I understood that once you've been labeled the villain, your words lose value, even if they're the same words they used to applaud. I opened new accounts. I tried to come back with another name, with another style, with less pride on screen so they wouldn't attack me, but the damage was already done, because people still came, sniffing around like trained dogs searching for shame. They'd comment with the same hashtag, they'd leave memes, they'd ask me to spit in a bag to make it real, as if my life were a permanent circus. I'd delete, block, report, and it was like bailing water with a spoon in a flood. I realized they weren't interested in my content, they were interested in my downfall, and that's a collective addiction that nobody wants to admit. Damian, throughout that whole process, faded away as if I were draining him, and it made me so angry because he was the one who benefited most from my success. When I was on top, he enjoyed the financial stability, the gifts, the trips, the comfort of being with someone important. But when I was in the mud, he started talking about peace, as if my life were a noise that bothered him. We argued about everything, about my phone, about my attempts to come back, about my anxiety attacks, and he always ended up at the same point, that I was obsessed, that I needed help, that he couldn't handle it. I'd listen to him and think how easy it is to want a famous girlfriend, but not to want the person when fame becomes a knife. The week my account was shut down, Damian left me. He didn't do it with an epic fight or with tears. He did it with a coldness that still gives me chills. He told me he no longer recognized himself in the relationship, that everything was chaos, that I needed to heal alone, and he said it as if he were doing me a favor. I just stared at him, waiting for him to reconsider, waiting for him to at least feel guilty for abandoning me when I needed him most. But he didn't hesitate, and that lack of hesitation was the confirmation that his love was comfort, not commitment. I felt the floor being ripped out from under me because it's one thing to lose followers and another to lose the accomplice in your daily life. As if the universe had a cruel sense of humor, shortly after I started seeing him on social media with another girl, a fitness girl, one of those who chew salad like it's a prayer, one of those who post clean plates and eat them without editing. People celebrated it, they congratulated him, they told him he was on a healthy path now, as if I were a disease he had overcome. It burned me because I knew he was using that relationship as a public demonstration that he was the good guy. And the internet loves those simple narratives, the hero who leaves the crazy girl and gets with the right one. Nobody asked who supported whom when everything was fine, because that doesn't get likes. With my main account dead and Damian gone, I had to reinvent myself because you can't pay for life with pride. I tried to pivot towards wellness because I thought if the public hated me for waste, then I could approach it from an angle of learning and change. I presented myself as a healthy lifestyle coach. I talked about discipline, self-care, habits, rebuilding. In my head it was smart, it was growth, it was turning the tables on the blow. But nobody believed me because on the internet it doesn't matter what you do today, it matters what they once assigned to you and repeated 1,000 times. Every new video received the same ridicule, as if people were waiting for me to apologize on my knees before they'd even listen to me. I realized the problem wasn't just what I did, it was what I represented to them. For many, I was the perfect excuse to hate a big-bodied woman who dared to be confident. So they used me as a warning, as a moral tale. Look what happens if you think you're too much. Look what happens if you don't apologize for existing. I'd read that and feel like screaming. Because nobody made a moral tale out of Leo for exposing internal videos. Nobody punished him for turning my humiliation into content. They treated him as honest and me as a monster. And that asymmetry seemed sick to me. The financial part was what hit me the hardest. Because there's no speech that can save you there. I had to accept a job in a catering service, something I never imagined, because I was always the one showing food, not the one serving food to others. The first day I put on the uniform, and I felt like I'd shrunk, as if they'd forcibly erased my shine. It was ironic to the point of pain. I, who had sold myself as abundance, was now counting trays and following orders. And on top of that there were strict hygiene and control rules. So I worked surrounded by food I couldn't freely touch, as if the universe were playing a private joke on me. At events, while I served, I'd hear people talking about influencers, about trends, about scandals, and sometimes someone would mention the hashtag from a year ago as if it were an urban legend. I wanted to go up to them and say that's me. I'm here, I'm still alive, I'm not a meme, I'm a person. But I kept quiet because I learned that when you've already been labeled, speaking is just giving them more material. I'd swallow and serve canapés with a professional smile that hurt. And in that silence I felt a mix of hatred and determination because even though they had broken me, I didn't want to give them the pleasure of seeing me give up. The most humiliating part was finding out from third parties what happened to Leo. It turns out he was promoted to regional manager of the burger chain, and they celebrated him as if he were an example of integrity. They said that thanks to the publicity and his honesty, the brand grew, that his location became well known, that people went to take pictures where the influencer fell. I imagined him there in an iron shirt, smiling, capitalizing on what destroyed me. And I felt that old rage return, because I was punished for a performance, and he was rewarded for exposing me as if cruelty were a merit when it comes with a calm face. I try to make peace with my story. I really tried, even if it makes many people laugh to think I have depth. I told myself that maybe this was a lesson, that maybe I should keep a lower profile, that maybe I should stop depending on applause. But every time I thought about the origin, about that define curvy and hot comment, I felt attacked all over again, because for me it all started with an aggression and the world acted as if that aggression were a minor detail. They demanded repentance from me for the waist, but nobody apologized for the fat phobia, and that balance seemed like a lie to me. I remained convinced that they threw the first punch, only the internet decided that my response was the real crime. Over time, my name stopped being a trend, but it didn't stop existing as a scar. I'm not who I was before, but I'm not the caricature they invented either, even though sometimes they look at me as if I were. Damian went on to live his correct life. Leo moved up in his job and I was left working shifts, looking at trays, thinking about how a narrative can kill a career. The irony is that the world says all of this was a consequence, as if consequence were a just God and not a mob hungry to see someone fall. And still, if you ask me today, the most absurd thing is that they say I can't define myself. But the ones who could never define the difference between justice and spectacle were them. Comments from Update 3. Anonymous User 1 says, "The ending is poetry. You started a fundraiser for post-traumatic stress after getting caught spitting out food. It got reported for fraud. Your account was shut down and your boyfriend left with a fitness girl. And you still tell it as if the world owes you an apology when all you did was build your brand on lies." OP's reply. Poetry is a nice word for what was actually a lynching, and you know it. You just love to dress up hate as humor. I started the fundraiser because I was being publicly destroyed and I needed to support myself while I defended myself. But you people turn any attempt to survive into a scam because you need to see me as the villain. And the thing with Damian and the fitness girl isn't justice, it's opportunism. Because he left when the comfort was gone, not because I was bad, but because he's weak when it comes to supporting something real. Anonymous User 2 says, "The best part is that Leo came out a total winner. You went to expose fat phobia, ended up as #LadyWaste. You ended up serving catering without even being able to touch the food, and he got promoted to regional manager thanks to your own spectacle. I mean, you made him famous yourself and you still say you don't understand what you did wrong." OP's reply, "Just because he won doesn't mean he was right. It means the world rewards those who humiliate with a saintly face. And that says more about you all than it does about me. I made him famous because he attacked me and I responded, and I'm not going to apologize for defending myself, because staying quiet has never protected anyone. If anything is clear to me, it's that success isn't always built on merit. Sometimes it's built by using someone as a stepping stone. And Leo was an expert at that while you all applauded as if it were a virtue."